Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta tier list post YCS Ecuador and the France Nationals. Big dogs, I made a very bad take a couple of days ago. My bad. But at least you know I'm not Diddy. I'm not gonna be saying bad takes all the time. Take that, take that, take that. Okay, all right, just one. Today, big dogs, I have comprised a tier list of the big kahunas Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies that have been topping, and we're gonna be rating them from best to worst. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all big dogs? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. The meta tier list. Woo! Today we are going to be ranking these Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks based on how powerful they are and the ease of being able to top and win a national championship. In case you guys did not know, YCS season is technically over for now. We won't be having any more events like that, but we will be having huge events like nationals and state championships. And of course, this is going to have a trickle-down effect on you guys as the players, as you're going to want to be as most prepared, whether you're going against your friends, locals, and anything in between. This could also be a perfect guide for a player looking to play a meta deck and still a little indecisive on which Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck they want to pick. Let's go ahead and start off with the elephant in the room, because you know there are going to be players that may complain about it if I take too long. Ryzeal, Mitsurugi, and Maliss are hands down the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, this format is very reminiscent of Dragon Ruler spellbook format, where two strategies are easily the best decks in the entire games. The only difference is that other strategies can compete. So yeah, these are going to be the best of the best, and there's pretty simple reasons why. While these decks are different from one another, both Maliss and Ryzeal Mitsurugi punish your opponent for interacting with you. Back in my day when hand traps meant something, big dogs, using a hand trap would either stop your opponent or it would force them to go to some wonky combo lines. These decks simply don't care. Cards like Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, and Effect Veiler just don't cut it right now, while other hand traps like the Molchermies, Drolin Lockbird, and the Dominus cards barely cut it. Of course, there are other instances that go alongside of hand traps that make or break your Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy, which pretty much means that this isn't absolute information. It's just the reason why these decks are so strong. But now that we have all of that out of the way, the mandatory talking about the best decks in the room, let's talk about the other decks in the room, because we don't care about that elephant. Blue Eyes White Dragon. Kaiba's deck. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna start off this video with an incredibly controversial take. Blue Eyes is one of the better decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! It tops at a consistent pace, but there is nothing unfair about this deck. It's great but fair. I actually think that that's the huge problem about Blue Eyes. It is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy that could be considered top tier. It has the plays, it has the consistency, it has the power. But what it doesn't have is that one very unfair Yu-Gi-Oh! Card that can either turn the game back into its favor or prevent the opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, Blue Eyes loses to quite the bit of cards in the meta that are fair Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards themselves. And if you want to compare to unfair Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, Mitsurugi 100% fits that bill. Mitsurugi does not have any restrictions to be able to play them. It has a branded fusion ritual spell card in Mitsurugi Ritual, and it can play powerful cards like Dominus Impulse, a hand trap that is really good in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. Whether you're playing it as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, which is what this icon resembles, or you're playing it as a mixture deck, it is still top tier and unfair. When it comes to terms of power, Mitsurugi and Blue Eyes are close to neck and neck. But those very unfair cards that allow the strategy to almost come back out of nowhere is pretty signature for Mitsurugi, and is the reason why it's one of the strongest decks in the game. I want you to think of these two strategies kind of like you and your youngest sibling. You had to work to get whatever you want. Your mama beat you when the dishes wasn't done. But the youngest kid in the house, kind of just get away with it for free, right? That is the difference between these two Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. And the difference in power between Cyber Dragon and these two strategies is even wider. Big dogs, I was pretty impressed to find out that Cyber Dragon did top a regional event. The only thing is that players said that this wasn't a Cyber Dragon deck, it was a Fiendsmith deck, and it's kind of hard to disagree. While I do think that Cyber Dragon can still be successful, I would 100% say that this is a deck that's being played on hard mode right now. Cyber Dragon doesn't have the tools to be able to compete by itself in this Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta. And if we're being honest, no Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy pretty much competes by itself. But the Fiendsmith engine is a lot more compatible with other Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh strategies than it is with Cyber Dragon, making this deck incredibly hard to play. Now, Crystrons, buddies. You see, Crystrons remind me of that cool uncle that you don't remember his name, but he really cool. Yeah, let's be honest, I got a few of those. He that guy styling in the corner by himself, and you respect it, but you didn't really want to learn the craft. Kind of like how you didn't really want to learn the Crystron cards. This deck is one of the best decks in the game. Crystron actually has something that most Yu-Gi-Oh strategies don't have, an Omni negation that can negate from anywhere. Cyber Dragon Infinity is a crazy good Yu-Gi-Oh card, which is weird that I say this because Cyber Dragon plays Cyber Dragon Infinity. But the difference here is that Crystron has very unfair cards like Crystron Tristalos, which allows them to be able to synchro summon when your opponent blinks. Between that and Crystron's ability to naturally play board breakers inside of the deck, this is easily one of the most unfair Yu-Gi-Oh strategies in the game. Next is your boys, Regenesis, man. And I've been telling you about these dogs, man. Regenesis is a really good Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Whether you're using the Kashtira engine, using those cards to be able to banish your opponent's important cards face down, which almost means forever, or you're playing Bystials because they just so happen to have the same attack. They can stop Fiendsmith, Mitsurugi, and Maliss cards when you mix in Branded Regain. Yeah, dog, this deck is actually really crazy and has some really good cards, but I'm gonna say great but fair. The strongest card that this deck does have is Regenesis Birth. Being able to Book-a-Moon your opponent's monsters once per turn, get your Regenesis cards to the graveyard during that time, which means it cycles them to the hand, as well as being able to special summon Regenesis monsters. Holy, the card's strong, but it's a trap card. It's incredibly slow, restrictive, and pretty easy to play around. Don't get me wrong, Regenesis is still really good, and I have a deck profile on my channel in case you guys wanted to know more about the strategy. But there is no way that this deck is better than Blue Eyes right now. And there's also some other flaws with Regenesis, like when your opponent gets rid of your cards on your turn. Yeah, I gotta figure out how to get them back. The deck is great and fair, a balanced, strong Yu-Gi-Oh deck that does have some things that makes the deck pop in the meta. We could pretty much say the exact same thing about Fire Kings, big dog. Brother, man, I promise you, this deck needs just one card. I think the reason why people dismiss Fire Kings is because it can be inconsistent. With the strategy only having Olconix, Ponix, Sanctuary, and Fire King Island as their starter cards, if you max out every single one of those cards, you'd have 12, which we know ain't enough. This makes the deck inconsistent and often prone to bricking, as well as your opponent being able to foresight your plays and stop them if they know how to stop the deck. On top of that, Fire King isn't incredible playing into a board and does need hand traps to help supplement him, which aren't at the best spot right now. But I would also like to point out that this has probably been my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh deck for the past 2 years. And it is a strategy that can still top like these other two strategies. Just no unfair things that make it ridiculous, which I swear, this should be the baseline of the meta. These should be the best decks in the game. It would make Yu-Gi-Oh a little bit more fun, but I want to know what you guys have to say. Memento feels a lot like Crystron, and some players were really upset that I didn't mention Memento as the 5th best deck in the game. And I have to say, you're not wrong. I actually think if somebody used my top 5 and instead of putting Mitsurugi, put Memento, they'd be 100% correct too. It's really a toss-up between those two decks because they both do things that are really good. Memento always having a way to be able to win the game is ridiculous. Memento is really good at playing through interruptions, and Memento Akihiron is a crazy strong Yu-Gi-Oh card that not only gets back your utility and allows you to chain block, but allows your bigger Memento monsters to always attack for game. Also, being able to fusion summon with cards in your graveyard is absolutely sick. Memento is one of those Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that on paper doesn't look really strong, but when you start to read the cards and see how they interact with the opponent, you then start to understand that this deck is crazy good and should not be underestimated. The same could be said for Mermail. Get this deck out of my face. I think everyone hates Mermail at this point in time. It's actually for a fair reason too. Mermail going uninterrupted can hand loop you. Despite this deck no longer having totally awesome and stuff like that, being able to get rid of most cards in your opponent's hand is typically enough to win the game. But the best part about it is that Mermail also doubles up as an amazing going second board breaker style Yu-Gi-Oh deck. The only problem is that Yu-Gi-Oh players suck at PCST. I might have to make a class on how card effects work, but we're in 2025 and players are still using infinite impermanence on Neptibus, thinking that you won't be able to send cards to the graveyard for its effect activation. Oh my god. Wisdom is fast, my friend, but you're faster. This deck is top tier and unfair. Mermail is one of the very few decks you don't want to see when going first or going second, simply because a skilled Mermail player will always have options to be able to break your board or make sure you can never make a board by hand looping you. Melodious has never really been a bad Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but I think what really defines Melodious is the other cards you put inside of the deck, because the strategy itself isn't going to be breaking any boards anytime soon. With hand traps not being as powerful and board breaker cards not working as well with this deck, I'm gonna go put it as the first strategy to take a really good pilot. Melodious is not a bad deck by any means, and I think that Herald of Orange Light is really strong. The only problem though is, just like I said, the Melodious engine itself isn't incredible. It's not something that's gonna wow you like summon Garunic's Pass or summon 4 Regenesis monsters. Holy God, that sounds bad in comparison. In essence, what I'm trying to tell you guys is that oftentimes less is more in this format. These 3 strategies do a lot of less, and this strategy does a lot of more. And the differential is that this deck can get a lot of things done simply because it can play around things with the less resources that it uses. Tenpai dragons, big dog. Yeah, last year it was actually a good idea to tell your opponent to go first. In today's Yu-Gi-Oh, that sounds like a terrible idea. I don't care how many Charmies you got. I wouldn't necessarily put Tenpai Dragon in hard mode, but takes a really good pilot. That seems kind of disrespectful too. Brother man, what good pilot?
Her third summon Pedra!
I guess what we could be referring to as takes a good pilot is being able to build and confidently use your cards correctly when going second and breaking a board. If some of these other Yu-Gi-Oh strategies make a board, it is incredibly hard to break. And when you use some of the best board breakers, you have to lose your battle phase. And with Sangan summoning, as well as Tenpai Dragon Chandra and Sangan Kaiman currently being limited, it's a lot harder to play these decks into those boards because you can't consistently see your cards while they consistently can. I think Yubel is also another strategy that takes a really good pilot. Mainly because, brother, have you ever went against a Charmy as a Yubel player? It's bad. Its most unfair card, Phantom of Yubel, was limited. If that card does come off the list, this strategy can be strong again, mainly because it doesn't care about the more Charmy cards. It can set up some pretty good insulation and some low ceiling boards to be able to survive through that. Yubel's still a good deck. People were just sleeping on it. Odion's still my dog, man. Bro, how can you not like that bald-headed Wyatt? He was standing on business. He was fighting for his bro. He was trying to get that action for a Shizu. He was using trap cards before they were cool. Yeah, bro, I think that time has finally proved that this deck's still good, but it's in the takes a good pilot category. You're probably wondering what exactly is the difference between great but fair and takes a really good pilot. What takes a really good pilot, there are no free wins with these decks. You can't just be sitting across the table and be like, yeah, this game is mine. You gotta earn every single win. But your deck is powerful enough to be able to give you the tools to be able to earn every single win. Odion pretty much just does that, when you can use Lord of the Heavenly Prisons to search any hand trap, and the Fiendsmith engine works with this strategy incredibly well. Now, Unchained is almost in the exact same situation as Yubel. The good thing about this deck is that it can play through a ton of hand traps. The bad thing about this deck is that the hand traps can't be the Molcharmies. Unchained will easily go into that takes a really good pilot category. Again, Fiendsmith decks, I think at the very lowest, are right here, except for you, Cyber Dragon. You stay there. Mainly because the Fiendsmith engine does so much bulk carry. But when you combine it with a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that actually makes sense with the deck, they can be really good so long as you play the decks correctly. The same really can't be said for Live Twin, because this strategy was a strategy I told you guys was unfair. Brother man, every single card in this deck is a 1-card combo. Hell, normal summoning hand traps is almost a 1-card combo in this deck. I think when it comes to all Fiendsmith decks, the reason why Live Twin does it so well is because it sets up the Abawa coup play incredibly fast. It's also a deck that's fully immersed into the Fiendsmith line. The main strategy is Fiendsmith combo, where these other decks have to pivot into that line. Snake Eyes, though, feels almost the same way. But it's not really a bad deck. I'm gonna put it in takes a good pilot too. Snake Eyes Ash is still full 1-card combo, big dogs. And the boards that it can make are pretty devastating despite generic cards being banned, like Appaloosa, Borreload, and Baron. This is one of those strategies where if you know somebody that's been playing Snake Eyes since it came out, you can get rumbled by this deck. I would not sleep on it. Fiendsmith Primite or Fiendsmith Bystial Primite is pretty good. I'm actually going to say great but fair. The reason why I put it over these cards is because, first of all, this deck knows when to stop. It can easily stop going into full combo to give your opponent 11 million cards, but also, like I said, with Live Twin, this is a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that naturally can pivot into a Light Fiend through its own cards. cards. I also really like when you incorporate the Bystial engine, you have some pretty solid counters to both Ryzeal, Mitsurugi, or other Fiendsmith decks, and Maliss through the Bystials and Branded Regained. I think that White Forest, when it gets to pop off, is top tier and unfair. Easily one of the most ridiculous decks in the game. It's stupid. The only real thing that stops this deck is Jolden Logbird, but you're gonna have to hope and pray because the deck is a lot more consistent and a lot more powerful because of Alliance Insight. And of course, players, they figured it out. Now, Dragon Rulers actually does have quite the bit of tops, but I think that this deck is it's a hard mode. It's hard mode. Hear me out, guys. Dragon Rulers require 2 to 3 card combos. At very best, you're trying to floodgate your opponent using Kwakumiru Drago and Arclore Christia, but if you're trying to be honorable, like I am, I don't know what to tell you, you're summoning the Dragon Ruler monster, which TJ then mentioned that Access Code Talker out. And I hate it here. They're really making big bad buffer Access Code Talkers. Crazy. Dragon Rulers needs a little bit more support to be able to be a competitively viable deck. Maybe some type of engine that gets them more Dragon Ruler cards as they go through the Dragon Ruler cards. I don't know, genuinely. But they don't have a great inboard, and they don't really have amazing board breaking capabilities. Voiceless Voice is another great but fair Yu-Gi-Oh deck. One of the best things about Voiceless Voice is that it played through hand traps pretty well, and it does that against the Charmies. The best version that players have been using is Voiceless Voice Ryzeal, which I think is really smart, since Voiceless Voice doesn't need its extra deck to be able to set up Skull Guardian. That's cool. And in case you ever do get hand trapped, depending on your hand trap, you just go to an opposite line. I'm going to put Salamangreat in hard mode. I don't think that this deck is bad, but if we're talking about like winning a national event, which is what this tier list is based on, then I think we have to accept a few things. Salamangreat, while getting the new support, is still flawed. What I noticed about Salamangreat is that your best cards only really work when you can get your play started. And once your opponent realizes that you're on Salamangreat, taking away your normal summon becomes their priority. I also hate to say it, but Salamangreat does need better starter Yu-Gi-Oh cards. If you're playing cards like Lady Debug and Speedroid Terror Top, you can't really play Dominus Impulse. But if you're playing cards like Signet Mining, you're just getting cooked by anything that wants to stop that card. Phantom Knight's topping an event is crazy. It's almost like Cyber Dragon. It's one of those hard mode Yu-Gi-Oh decks. It's not that Phantom Knights are like terrible or anything. It's just that Phantom Knights are not that great. Definitely some new support should be on the horizon to make this deck stronger. Now, Heraldic Ryzeal was supposed to be the next best version of Ryzeal, but the only problem is Mitsurugi is a TCG exclusive and those cards are crazy. Regardless, this deck is still top tier and unfair. Do not make any mistake about this deck. If there was like a tier list of the best Ryzeal decks, it'd go Mitsurugi, then it would go Voiceless Voice, and after that, maybe Fiendsmith or whatever BS you guys decide to play it with. Oh, there's that Trap Tricks player. Yeah, definitely, yeah. Trap Tricks Ryzeal, you're somewhere on the list. And lastly is Labrynth, big dogs. Labrynth is one of my favorite decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! It actually inspired me to make a line called Mommy Milkers, which we will be selling that apparel very soon. I think Labrynth is one of those strategies that's takes a good pilot. I want to put it in great but fair, but it's not. It's hard to play. The complexities of Labrynth and deck building surrounding it is one of the most nuanced things in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's why I think the deck is so cool. It's so fun to play because it does require a very skilled deck list and an even better skilled player. Daruma Cannon also isn't as free as it used to be, but Nibiru is crazy in this deck. I'm going to leave it at great but fair, but no, it probably should be here. I want to know what you guys think. And of course, big dog, if you guys think I forgot any Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies, go ahead and let me know about that too. And if you think that I put somewhere something wrong, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Until then, big dogs, I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Check out these videos so I can catch you on the next one.